What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to make a video talking about how Ian Garry can beat Shavkat Rakhmonov this weekend at UFC 310, and I think that this fight is going to be a lot closer than people think. Now, I do think that Shavkat is going to get the win, but I am very, very, very high on Ian Machado Garry and every little thing that he does inside the organization. Now, he might not have the most exciting fights in 2024, but in 2023, he absolutely smacked Neil Magny, beat Daniel Rodriguez by KO, beat Song Kanan, is a very good fighter, and even when he's gone in there and fought fighters like Jeff Neal and Michael Venom Page, he has shown that he is the cream of the crop of the UFC welterweight division, and I think that's something that Garry will be able to show in this fight with Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat is an absolute beast. He's going to go in there and do so much, but Garry is one of those fighters that everybody wants to see fail, and I just don't think that that's going to happen in this context, to where I think it's going to be a very close fight. I do not think that Ian Garry is going to get finished, and I do think that Ian Garry could almost go out there and outperform Shavkat Rakhmonov in that co-main event of UFC 310 and steal his title shot from him. But if you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And while you're down there doing that, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys can always stay notified about the UFC content releasing every single day. But without further ado, let's jump right into the video about Ian Garry going in there and how he can beat Shavkat Rakhmonov. So when diving a little bit deeper into Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry, I don't think that this fight is going to be such one-sided and toward Rakhmonov's favor. Now, both of these fighters are undefeated. This is one of the first times in UFC history where the O has got to go. 18-0 Shavkat Rakhmonov going up against 15-0 Ian Machado Garry this weekend, co-main event, UFC 310, an incredible fight to be had. Now, Shavkat is going to have the reach advantage in this fight by 2.5 inches, 77 inches to 74.5 inches, and I think that that is going to be something that Shavkat is going to be able to work with pretty well in this fight to be able to control distance and control the range between Machado Garry. But the biggest thing that Ian Garry is going to have is he's going to have the height advantage. Ian Garry is going to be able to have a 2-inch height advantage in this fight, which is going to be something that 100% helps him be able to deter, be able to combat Shavkat, move, be able to kick him, do a lot of different things that Garry is known to do. Now, in this fight, Shavkat Rakhmonov, as we all know, is a very dangerous finisher, and every single fight that he's had, he's got to finish. His last 3 have been submissions, and he's got about equal subs to KOs in his professional mixed martial arts career. Now, Garry, on the other hand, has gone to some decisions, but I do think that Garry is a very intelligent fighter, especially with that corner with Diego Lima from Shootbox MMA. But really, I look at Garry, and I see the growth that he's had in his UFC career, especially in that Jeff Neal fight that he had, and that Michael Venom Page fight. Those performances might not look amazing on paper, but Ian Garry, when needed, has stuck to the game plan. And he has a corner around him that's going to give him a good game plan to go in there and possibly dismantle Shavkat. I'm not going to sit there and say that this is going to be the greatest performance of Ian Garry's life, because I think Shavkat is a puzzle that no one has been able to solve. But I do think if anyone can do it right now, I think Ian Garry needs to be talked about a little bit more to really have a chance on doing so. Garry is just that fighter who just knows how to win. Like I've said, Michael Venom Page, he wrestled to a win. Now, the wrestling and grappling didn't look great. It wasn't something that was out of a movie that he was going out there and doing, but he was able to manipulate positions and ultimately get the win, and that's all that matters inside the UFC, is getting the win. No one's going to remember really how it goes unless if we're breaking it down on like an MMA channel or talking about it in a podcast. But you know, in that fight before, that was a very close fight with Jeff Neal, but he stuck to the game plan. He did exactly what he needed to do, stayed incredibly disciplined, and ultimately got the win. And I think that's what he can do against Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov holds his chin very, very high up in the air. And if Garry can really go in there to combat that, I think it's going to be something that really helps him go in and start piecing up other combinations to the body. Now, Shavkat might be able to take Ian down at will. And I think that this is going to be the best thing to see from Garry if he's improved in his jiu-jitsu department and his wrestling department, because Shavkat is going to have the advantage there, and that is going to be easily the thing that separates these two individuals. So if Shavkat can take the fight to the ground at will, I don't think that Garry's going to have a chance on winning this fight, but I do think that Garry has developed a lot. I think his intelligence, as well as all of his skills and his motives and everything like that, have grown exponentially ever since kind of moving to that Shootbox MMA camp, ever since training around the world at different locations. I think that Ian Garry has really grown as a human being able to do this stuff from this, you know, this kid who came into the organization as kind of a prospect to now one of the top contending welterweights. I think Garry is genuinely a fighter that has so much in front of him. Now, Garry versus Rakhmonov is a fight that Garry is going to be able to win comfortably, in my opinion, in the stand-up if he continues to keep range. You do not want to get into a dirty boxing fight with Shavkat, because Shavkat is very technical in that very close out range. But Ian Garry does kind of a thing, keeps his arms out long to generate distance. And if he can kind of minimize the void between him and Shavkat and kind of keep something in there, it's going to make it very hard for Shavkat to get shots off, get different kind of moves and techniques off. And it's going to be something that isn't going to be very amazing for Shavkat to be able to go do and capitalize in a lot of different ways. You know, I look at Rakhmonov. He likes to fight in bar fights. He likes to go in there and swing for the fences when he can. He likes to go in there and beat guys at their own game, like that Jeff Neal fight that he had. One of the most destructive fights of 2023, where he fought Jeff Neal and ultimately bulldog choked him with, like, I don't know, a minute left on the clock to keep his finishing streak alive. Garry is a painter. He likes to have the art piece be beautiful. He likes to go in there and he likes to have a clear-cut image. And I think that that's going to be the stylistic difference between these two fighters. If Garry, what I think he can do more than a lot of other people think, is I think that Garry can go out there and genuinely keep the distance between Rakhmonov and kind of piece him up on the feet to a certain extent. I'm not going to say it's going to be like this overwhelming barrage of shots coming in Shavkat's direction. I'm not going to say it's going to be something that Shavkat won't be able to like counter or move off the line of, but I think that everyone thinking that Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to be this absolutely incredible beast that could never be defeated by anyone, I think is unrealistic, especially fighting someone as good as Ian Machado Garry. Now, the biggest thing that surprises me, and the reason that I would tell you guys to go bet on Ian Garry in this fight, is Ian Garry is a plus 285. Now, I'm not saying that Garry would win. I'm not saying that this is my official prediction, and I'm not saying that everything would go into this fight, but those are pretty good odds, considering that this fight, in my opinion, is going to be a lot closer than advertised. I look at Garry, and I see his incredible, illustrious career so far in the UFC, and yes, he's beat guys like Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, Michael Venom Page, Song Kanan, Daniel Rodriguez, guys like that, but those are good wins in the welterweight division, and everyone like that is going to allow Garry to build up to the title. He was going to fight Buckley, but now he's going in there to fight Shavkat. And I think that taking that Shavkat fight, which is an incredibly tougher fight than Joaquin Buckley, on such short notice, I think proves to every single person in the UFC that Garry is just that good and that confident in his ability to do whatever he needs to at any certain moment. And I think that if Garry can kind of, take all of that confidence and go out there and show and prove every single person inside the UFC, keep the range, throw jiu-jitsu in when he needs to. Don't make the fight a ground fight with Shavkat, but be able to defend when it does get taken to the ground. Use the fence, wall walk if needed. Do every little thing to kind of combat Shavkat. I think that this fight is going to be very interesting and easily Shavkat's toughest test inside the UFC. Shavkat hasn't fought the top tier guys in the welterweight division, kind of like Ian Garry. Their last fight was against a Taekwondo dude, Michael Venom Page for Ian Garry and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson for Shavkat Rakhmonov. Both then fought Jeff Neal previously, and then both prior to that fought Neil Magny. I look at these two guys and they've had very, very, very similar strength of schedules coming up within the organization. And I see Ian Garry and I see Shavkat, and I think that this is going to be a barn burner of a fight. But I don't think it's going to be as one-sided as a lot of people are saying, considering that Ian Machado Garry is disciplined. Ian Machado Garry is an amazing striker, and Ian gets overlooked for all the stuff that's kind of came in his direction, considering everything that was said about his wife, everything like that stemming from UFC 296 from Colby Covington. I think if people can overlook that and see how good and how disciplined and how amazing of a fighter Ian Garry is, I think that people would understand and realize that there is a victory and path for him to beat someone like Shavkat Rakhmonov. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and please, please, please tell me what you think about Ian Garry versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think that this is an incredible fight being had inside the welterweight division and a #1 contender fight for the UFC welterweight title. I look at Shavkat, and this is an absolute bold move for taking this fight on with Ian Garry, considering that he already had the title shot, but Shavkat is about that life. But Ian Garry is this too, taking a fight a week earlier prior than fighting Joaquin Buckley, who was a stockier fighter, to fight one of the biggest puzzles inside the welterweight division. I think both of these guys are amazing prospects in the welterweight division, and this being one of the first times that we've seen the O has to go 18-0 versus 15-0 in a co-main event and not a title fight is absolutely crazy. And I think that both of these guys have made a name for themselves, and this is going to be an absolutely crazy fight and easily the biggest fight of both of these individuals' career. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy the UFC content. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys can always be notified when UFC content releases every single day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.